Bilionário Tremeu no Acordo. Faxineira Sussurrou, Ninguém Nunca Disse. A tremor ran through the opulent boardroom, a room cloaked in luxury, but no one felt it like billionaire Arthur Carver. A legend in the corporate world, he sat at the head of the long, polished table, his face ashen, eyes wide with disbelief. This was the kind of moment that seemed ripped straight from a movie script. It wasn't just the numbers flashing on the screen that made Arthur's stomach twist. It was the hushed whisper of the cleaning lady, a woman he had barely noticed, who had just uttered a phrase that rocked his very foundation. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she'd said, her voice low but sharp as glass. Everyone in the room turned to the source, their expressions a mix of confusion and intrigue. Who was this woman? How dare she speak to him like that? But her presence had taken on an invisible weight, filled with truths that clawed at the edges of his mind. What truth could a mere cleaner harbor that could bring a self-made titan to his knees? The air was thick with palpable tension, the kind that coiled around everyone like a serpent ready to strike. As the clock ticked loudly against the silence, a bead of sweat trickled down Arthur's temple. His instincts screamed at him. He was about to unearth something monumental. What she saw each day while sweeping crumbs off the marble floor could be a killer. Each fleeting glance of hers had been overlooked, trivialized. But now, in that charged moment, she transformed into an enigma wrapped in lowly overalls. Why was she there? More importantly, what secrets had she uncovered amidst the lavish lifestyle and unchecked power? Gasps erupted from the tightly knit crowd, voices hastening to whisper. What did she mean? The tension electrified the air, shooting jolts of anticipation through those present. Torn between outrage and curiosity, Arthur felt reality shift beneath him, the boardroom's elegance contrasting with the raw implications of her words. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The murmurs morphed into heated debates, eyes darting between the millionaire and the unknown entity that dared to challenge him. Arthur's knuckles tightened against the table, the muscles of his jaw flexing as he fought for composure. A clammy palm gripped his tie as a strangled question clawed at his throat. What if she's right? What if I really don't know who I'm dealing with? And then, just as quickly, silence fell again, heavy and oppressive like a fog. Everyone held their breath, caught in the web of an unfolding story that felt bigger than nearly any business deal. No one could shake the feeling that the room had splintered open, revealing dark, throbbing pulses of hidden knowledge. Arthur peered into the dust motes dancing in the sunlight, filtering through the towering windows. He saw her unyielding gaze lock onto his, challenging him to try and uncover the truth that had escaped even his sharp mind. Questions danced in the silence, but one thing was certain. This day, with all its uncertainty and fear, would mark the beginning of something monumental. What secrets lay hidden just out of reach? The revelation was intoxicating, a bitter taste on the edge of his tongue. Arthur could feel the entire room closing in. They were all waiting for him to answer. What would he do? Arthur's breath quickened, each heartbeat thundering in his ears as he locked eyes with the cleaning lady. Her gaze was unwavering, cutting through the tension like a knife. The silence in the room was suffocating. He could hear the faint rustling of papers, their shuffle of feet. It felt like a rallying cry against the power he thought he wielded so seamlessly. What did she mean by those words? They gnawed at him, her implication clawing at the edges of his reason. He felt exposed, as if she'd peeled back layers of armor he'd meticulously cultivated. Arthur's mind raced through the myriad of what-ifs. What if she had seen something? Something he'd carelessly overlooked or buried deep? "Are you going to address this?" whispered Marianne, his right-hand woman. Her voice was a mix of concern and venom, a warning that reflected the stakes in the room. Arthur blinked, and for a fleeting moment, he saw the fear mirrored in the eyes of his colleagues. They were all expecting him to act, to reassert dominance, to dispel this gnawing uncertainty. He sat back in his chair, summoning a facade of calm. This is not the time for theatrics, he spat, attempting to dissolve the awkward tension into dismissive scoffs. But deep down, he could feel the tremors of doubt raking through him. But the cleaning lady held steady, brushing away the lack of respect in their eyes. "You don't know who I am, Mr. Carver," she stated, infusing a clarity to her voice that drew everyone's full attention. "And it's that ignorance that will be your downfall." The room gasped again, a collective intake of breath, as if the air had been sucked out. Arthur's throat tightened, words lodged like stones. Such audacity, such bravado from someone deemed invisible. Who was she? His mind flipped through faces, images of her mopping floors, tackling the mundane, while distant conversations floated around her. Had she really garnered such insight through the walls of wealth and secrets? Yet somehow, the way she spoke felt like a challenge, a dare to see beyond the superficial. It was infuriating and unnerving all at once. "Enough," Arthur finally managed, slamming his fists on the table. The sound echoed, reverberating against the cold marble. This is a board meeting, not a soap opera. Yet he couldn't shake the sense that this sudden upheaval was merely the genesis of something far more sinister. What could she possibly know? At that moment, the lights flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness before returning. For half a heartbeat, chaos settled on everyone's expressions. Eyebrows furrowed, glances exchanged, a subtle dance of anxiety and uncertainty. Then, as if sensing the charged atmosphere could ignite, the cleaning lady took a step forward. The boldness of it startled Arthur, muted the protests he felt rising in his chest. "I've heard things," she said, her voice steady. "Things you wouldn't believe." Arthur's heart raced. What things? Suddenly, the walls felt like they were closing in, the glittering surroundings of glass and gold becoming a prison. "Tell me," he breathed, unable to contain the urgency creeping into his voice. All eyes zeroed in on her, a predator readying for its kill. His demand hung in the air, thick with potential. But then she hesitated, a flash of something indecipherable crossing her features. Fear? Or was it something else? "I can't," she whispered, her resolve faltering. Not here. Panic clawed at the edges of Arthur's thoughts. "Why not?" he pressed, desperation rising. "Because they're watching." Those words hung like a thunderclap between them, freezing time. Arthur's thoughts spiraled. Who was they? What risks lay buried in her hidden truths? The boardroom buzzed into a sporadic chaos as murmurs erupted again, but it became white noise against the pounding rhythm of Arthur's heart. "Who's watching?" he demanded, but all he could see was the relentless, unyielding resolve glinting in her eyes, filled not with fear, but with a determination that sent chills down his spine. And just like that, the game had changed. A new truth lay at the surface, and now it was terrifyingly close. The stakes were rising, and time was running out. What had she stumbled upon? What danger lingered beneath the riches? The realization pressed down on him with an almost crushing weight. As he stared into her eyes, Arthur knew one thing. He was on the edge of a precipice, teetering dangerously close to discovering a world he was unprepared for. What dark secrets would unfold next? The tension electrified the air, a promise of chaos lurking just beyond reach. Arthur felt the room tilt as the implications of the cleaning lady's words washed over him. "They're watching." The phrase echoed in his mind, each repetition amplifying the dread settling deep in his gut. His colleagues fidgeted, divided glances sweeping across anxious faces, each weighing their loyalty against the threat. "What do you mean they're watching?" he insisted, trying to maintain control, but his voice cracked under the strain. The cleaning lady straightened, unfazed by the tension swirling around her. "You know full well, Mr. Carver. Something sinister lurks just beneath the surface. The whispers, the shadows, they see everything." Arthur glanced around the room again, searching for support, for someone to back him up. But all he saw were cowed expressions, fear tightening their features. Even Marian shrank back, her usual confidence swallowed by the mounting anxiety hanging like a storm cloud. "Enough of this," he forced through gritted teeth. The harshness of his tone felt more desperate than authoritative. "If you have something to say, say it." Instantly, the weight of the room shifted. Chatter quieted to an uneasy whisper, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. The cleaning lady smiled slightly, a knowing glint in her eye. "Okay," she said softly, "but you might not like it." Arthur's heart raced. The stakes were impossibly high. Hints of betrayal flitted through his mind. Had she truly unearthed something so damaging? Fine, he relented, a hasty decision born from swirling desperation. "Meet me after this meeting. We'll discuss it privately." "Too late," she countered, shaking her head. "It's not just about you anymore." A chill crept through him. The realization sank deep. Whatever she knew, it didn't just involve him. "What are you saying?" Arthur demanded, voice rising with a ferocity that quieted the room again. "What has your mundane existence uncovered?" But something changed in her expression, shifting from defiance to something much darker, a cold fear that twisted her features. "You don't understand. The people I've heard from, they're more than just shadows. They're dangerous, Arthur. People who won't hesitate to use what they know against you." Arthur's mind raced, piecing together fragments of uneasy truths he'd chosen to ignore. Rumors, chatter, subtle signs that had become part of the background noise of success. Could it be? Were their eyes not just watching but waiting? His desire for control slipped further away, and he felt panic rising again. "Then tell me," he urged, swallowing hard. "What is at stake? What do they know?" For a fleeting second, he saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, that steely resolve faltering once more. "Something far worse than you think." Before he could press again, the lights flickered ominously, this time going out completely. The boardroom plunged into darkness, and chaos erupted as startled voices filled the void. Arthur's pulse drummed loudly in his ears, every moment stretching into a haunting eternity. Then, in the pitch black, came the sound of glass shattering somewhere nearby, followed by someone's panicked scream. "Get down," he yelled instinctively, pushing Marianne to the floor as he instinctively sought cover behind the table. The lights flickered back on. The scene transformed into a surreal landscape of fear and confusion. All eyes searched frantically around the room for the source of danger. The cleaning lady stood eerily still, her expression pinpointed a mixture of devastation and resolution. "What the hell just happened?" Arthur gasped, adrenaline flooding through him. But as he turned to confront her once more, she was already backing away, retreating toward the door. "It's bigger than just this room, Arthur. It's coming." With that final, charged proclamation, she disappeared into the shadows beyond the doorway, leaving Arthur standing amidst a swirl of chaos, the implications of her words hanging thick in the air. What was this larger threat she hinted at? What kind of danger had he been blissfully ignorant of? The realization rushed in like a tidal wave. Whatever secrets she held could shatter everything he'd built. The clock was ticking, and he had to find out before it was too late. The hunt for answers had just begun, but time was a luxury he no longer possessed. The silence in the boardroom felt suffocating. Arthur's heart thundered against his ribcage. Had the darkness concealed a greater fear than he'd ever imagined? The chaos couldn't be ignored. His colleagues' panicked expressions bore into him. Whispers of what just happened. And did anyone see that? Bounced around the room like errant bullets. "Everyone stay calm," Arthur shouted, but his own voice quivered. It took an immense effort to keep his posture steady, to project courage when dread gripped him. As he stood, he caught Marianne's terrified gaze, her eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. "The lights," she began, her voice faltering. "They didn't just flicker. It felt like..." "What?" he pressed, stepping closer as he shielded her, instinctively wanting to pull her away from all of this. "Did it feel like someone wanted to scare us? Or worse?" Before she could reply, the door swung open. Arthur turned, a rush of trepidation coursing through him. A security guard stood in the doorway, confusion etched across his face. "What happened in here?" An alarm went off, and I couldn't get through. Glass broke. One of the younger employees pitched in, still trembling. "We thought it was an attack." "Get everyone to safety," Arthur commanded. "We need to regroup." The guard nodded, darting off to carry out the hurried orders. But Arthur couldn't rip the thoughts from his brain. Why would someone want to attack them now? What was happening beyond the confines of this room? Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it. A shadow lingering just outside. He thought of the cleaning lady, the uncertainty in her eyes as she portrayed an ominous threat. Was she involved in all of this? Did she know more than she revealed? "Arthur." Marianne's hand gripped his arm tightly, pulling him back to the present. We need to leave. Now. His instinct screamed for answers, but the urgency in her voice tugged at a deeper fear. You're right, he admitted reluctantly. We can't stay here, but we have to find her. She must be in danger. Or what? She asked, her voice trembling. Or she is a part of it, he finished darkly. The boardroom door slammed shut, and Arthur jumped, adrenaline surging. He couldn't shake the notion that being trapped inside could be a deadly mistake. Let us go? He grabbed Marianne's hand, and they rushed toward the exit, weaving through startled employees who were still shaken by the unexpected chaos. Outside the boardroom, they were greeted by the chaotic bustle of the office. People moved in frantic haste, seeking safety amid the uncertainty. Arthur pulled Marianne aside, finding a quieter corner, trying to piece together his thoughts. Call the police, Arthur instructed, his voice a low whisper. Something just doesn't feel right. I don't trust anyone right now. Her fingers shook as she pulled out her phone, but before she could dial, a familiar face emerged from the depths of the crowd. It was David, his eyes wild, his breath labored. Arthur, he gasped, the urgency palpable. You have to listen. They're coming. Not just to the building. They're coming for you. A chill shot down Arthur's spine. What are you talking about? They know you learned something, David continued, his expression twisted by fear. The more you investigate, the closer they get. You have to run. Who are they? The question hung heavy, filled with dread. David opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden sound shifted through the air, a sharp crack followed by a high-pitched whine. A shadow passed overhead, and Arthur looked up to see the glint of a drone hovering above, its gaze fixed directly on them. In that moment, he felt the collective heartbeat of everyone around him quicken. The walls that once confined them now felt like they were closing in, squeezing them tight as panic rose anew. Run, he shouted, racing down the hall with Marianne close behind, adrenaline propelling them forward. But as they maneuvered through the chaos, the question loomed. Who was truly behind the threat, and how far would they go to ensure Arthur never uncovered the truth? As they stumbled out of the building into the dim light outside, Arthur knew one thing with chilling certainty. This was only the beginning of a nightmare he couldn't yet comprehend. He had to find the cleaning lady if she was still alive, because against all odds, she might be the key to exposing the shadows and their secrets. But would she want to share them? As thoughts spiraled, a familiar voice echoed in his mind. They see everything, and whatever they saw next might just seal his fate. Arthur's breath came in short, ragged gasps as he and Marianne dashed away from the building. The frigid night air felt sharp against his skin, but adrenaline was the only thing fueling him now. The drone buzzed ominously overhead, a mechanical hawk poised to swoop down at any moment. Where do we go? Marianne's voice trembled as they ran, her eyes darting around as if the shadows themselves were hunting them. I don't know. Anywhere but here, Arthur replied, urgency and fear slicing through his words. He tore his gaze from the drone, focusing instead on the street ahead. They had to find somewhere safe, somewhere they could think. They turned a corner and sprinted down a narrow alleyway that smelled of damp concrete and trash. The sound of screeching tires echoed as a car sped by, its headlights momentarily illuminating their faces. Arthur pulled Marianne closer, instinctively shielding her from the dangers lurking just beyond their sight. Suddenly, the alarm of a nearby building blared to life, its sirens wailing. It felt like the world was collapsing around them. Panic rooted deep in the pit of his stomach, he felt an intense urgency to get answers, but voices straining against the chaos drowned out his rational thoughts. Arthur, Marianne exclaimed, pointing toward a dimly lit doorway. What is that? His heart raced as he squinted into the darkness. It was a small convenience store, its flickering sign barely visible against the oppressive night. We should go in. At least we can think there, he said, his voice barely a whisper. They slipped through the door, the tiny bell jingling overhead. The air inside was stale, mixed with the scent of old chips and stale soda. Arthur glanced around, his eyes flicking to the window, half expecting the drone to follow them inside. Lock the door, he said, urgency compelling Marianne to comply. She hurriedly turned the lock, glancing outside as if expecting pursuers. Do we even know what we're doing? She whispered, panic lacing her voice. We can't just hide here forever. Arthur ran a hand through his hair, frustrated and fearful. We have to figure out who is after us. It has to be connected to that woman. Do you really think she knows anything? What if she is the one we need to be scared of? He met her eyes, the trembling in her hands mirrored in his heart. I don't know, but we have to try. If she is really a target too. Before he could finish, the store's door rattled, sending shivers down both their spines. They froze in place, listening intently. There were footsteps approaching, firm and heavy against the pavement outside. Arthur Marianne's voice broke. What if it's them? He shook his head, his mind racing. We'll take our chances. If it's her, we need to warn her. If it's them, the voice outside interrupted, deep and gravelly. We know you're in there. There's nowhere to hide. Come out peacefully, and we can talk. Instinctively, Arthur and Marianne exchanged terrified glances. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Who is it? He whispered, gripping her hand tighter. I don't know, but I can't let them take you, Marianne replied, her voice steadying with resolve. In a sudden surge of determination, Arthur shouted back. What do you want? We're not afraid. Silence fell, heavy and thick like fog. Then, laughter slow, mocking, and chilling. You don't even know what's ahead of you. But soon enough, you'll find out, Arthur. The name hung in the air, electrifying and terrifying. How did they know? People outside began to shift, their forms blurring through the glass. The drone hovered closer, casting a long, eerie shadow through the store window. The door shook again, more violently this time. There was no time left. They couldn't stay. They needed a plan. And whatever they did next could mean the difference between uncovering the truth or being consumed by it. Arthur turned to Marianne, urgency igniting in his chest once more. We have to find that cleaning lady. She knows something we don't. If we can just find her. He paused, fear creeping back, before it's too late. But the question nagged in his mind. Who were the real monsters in this story, and could they ever escape the snare? The rush of footsteps outside churned his stomach. The darkness was closing in, and time was running out. The door shuttered again, a deep thud reverberating through the small store. Arthur pulled Marianne closer, their breaths mingling with the stagnant air around them. The shadows seemed to press in tighter, squeezing the warmth from their bodies and leaving only an icy panic. Arthur, we can't stay here, she urged, her voice just above a whisper. The tremor in her hands grew, radiating a shared fear that wrapped around them both like a vice. They'll break the door down. Just one more minute, he insisted, trying to gather his scattered thoughts. He edged closer to the front window, peering out through the glass. The figures had merged into a chaotic blur. Were they just a bunch of angry businessmen? Or something more sinister? The voice outside boomed again, sharper this time. Last chance. Come out now, or we'll take you out. Arthur's heart raced. The thought of facing whoever was out there, whether it was the cleaning lady they needed or some sort of monster, made his stomach twist. We need to go out the back, he whispered urgently. Now. Marianne nodded. They slipped past the rows of dusty shelves and reached a door marked employees only. As they turned the handle, a huge crash echoed from the front of the store, the door buckling under the weight of a body slamming into it. Go, Arthur shouted as he shoved the door open. They tumbled into the darkened hallway, their bodies colliding with the cold ceramic tiles. It felt like stepping into the eerie unknown. They rushed down the narrow corridor, the back door looming ahead like a tantalizing promise of freedom. With each step, dread hung heavy in the air, threatening to engulf them. What if they see us? Marianne asked breathlessly, glancing over her shoulder as they dashed. They won't tea if we're quick, he assured, though he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes tracking their every move. They pushed through the back door and stumbled into an alley, the frigid wind biting at their skin. Which way? Marianne panted, looking around frantically. The alley was an old, forgotten path, littered with debris. Left, Arthur pointed, and they took off, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They rounded another corner and suddenly stopped short. The street opened into a larger area, a ghostly parking lot illuminated by flickering streetlights. Only a single car was in sight, parked haphazardly at the far end. Should we take it? Marianne asked, her eyes wide with desperation. Arthur hesitated, wrestling with the notion of stealing a vehicle. But with chaos sprinting at their heels, they had little choice. We don't have time. They sprinted toward the car, feet pounding against the concrete. With every stride, he could almost hear the footsteps echoing behind them, growing closer. Arthur pushed the driver's side door, and it creaked open. "Get in," he urged, but as Marianne scrambled into the seat, Arthur's instincts kicked in. He scanned their surroundings. Hovering above, the drone glinted under the faint light, its presence a sinister reminder of their peril. Arthur slid into the car, quickly locking the doors. As he searched the ignition for a way to start the vehicle, he caught the shadows again. The looming figures from the store had emerged, their outlines moving with purpose. They seemed to know their every move. "Oh God!" The engine roared to life. With a surge of determination, he slammed the gear into reverse, tires screeching as they took off down the lot. The shadows surged after them, arms waving, but they were just a blur in the rearview mirror. "Go right," Marianne yelled, looking back just in time to see the figures draw closer. He obeyed, spinning the wheel, heart hammering wildly against his ribs. They flew down a narrow street, windows up, the wind howling, drowning out the chaos. They just fled. Breath escaped him as they gained a little distance, but they couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. They needed answers. "Which way to find her?" he said, heart racing as he yelled over the roaring engine. And just like that, the streets seemed to twist and turn into a maze of uncertainty. The question loomed over them as uncertainty settled in. Who were they dealing with? And, more importantly, would they ever find the cleaning lady before the storm broke loose? As they sped down the unfamiliar road, shadows loomed over them from both outside the car and deep within their hearts. The streets blurred past them, a mix of asphalt and pale white lines that melted into a dizzying whirl. Arthur clenched the wheel tighter, focused on the road ahead. The shadows behind them were still there, looming over the car like dark storm clouds, relentless and threatening. "Where do we go now?" Marianne gasped, her eyes darting, scanning the dim surroundings. She was pale, a ghost of her former self, fear washing away the color from her cheeks. Arthur could feel her tension radiating through the car. "I don't know," he admitted, urgency coated his voice. He punched the gas, willing the car to fly faster, but the blacktop felt endless. "We need somewhere safe, somewhere we can figure this out." "What about that warehouse up ahead?" she suggested, pointing at a crumbling building that cast jagged shadows across the parking lot. "They might not find us there." Arthur nodded, his heart thudding. Instinct made it feel like their only option. The night seemed to pulse around them, filled with noises that grew louder as they approached the warehouse, metal clanking, distant voices, and the faint thrum of the drone still above them. He swung the car into the lot, bumping over uneven gravel and stopping in a shadowy corner. "Stay low," he whispered, glancing at Marianne. They both took a moment to catch their breath, adrenaline still pumping through their veins. They climbed out of the vehicle, crouching low as they made their way toward the entrance. The air was thick with moisture and the scent of rust, and each step seemed laden with the weight of their unwelcome pursuit. Inside, the warehouse stretched before them, filled with towering stacks of old crates and machinery cloaked in shadows. It felt like stepping into a forgotten world, away from the pressures outside. "Let us search for a place to hide. We can't stay out in the open," Arthur urged, moving deeper into the maze of equipment. Marianne nodded, and together they slipped into the gloom, the warehouse swallowing their whispered footsteps. The darkness seemed alive, watching, waiting. Just past a row of crates, they spotted a small storage room. Its door hung slightly ajar, like an invitation or a trap. It was impossible to tell. "Over there," Marianne whispered, her voice barely above a breath. They huddled into the tiny room, pushing the door closed behind them. Light seeped in through the cracks, and they were cloaked in a veil of shadow, but it wasn't enough to hide the tension. "Why are they hunting us?" Marianne's voice trembled, and Arthur could see tears shimmering in her eyes. "I don't know." "Wait," he paused, the realization hitting him like a bolt of lightning. It was the cleaning lady. She knew something. "This isn't just about us." "What do you mean?" "The note, didn't you feel it? She warned us in a way. They want her for some reason. Whatever she's mixed up in, it's dangerous." Suddenly, they heard voices outside the door, low and hushed, but undeniably close. Arthur's pulse quickened, and he pressed a finger to his lips, urging Marianne to silence. "Split up," a voice said, deeper and rough. "They couldn't have gone far. Check every corner. What if we don't find them?" Another voice replied, tinged with uncertainty. "We need them both." The deal already in motion. The cold grip of fear tightened around Arthur's chest. What deal? What did they want with the cleaning lady? Each question spiraled deeper into uncertainty, clouding his mind. Marianne squeezed his hand, grounding him. In the dark, he could sense her resolve mixing with his own. This was bigger than them. They had to act fast. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the main entrance, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. They were drawing nearer. It was time to choose. Do we fight? Arthur whispered, desperation leaking into his voice. Or do we run? Marianne suggested, eyes wide. The moment hung suspended between them, thick with tension, and answered the darker question they needed to escape, and fast. But which way? A part of him shivered with the certainty that whatever lay ahead was worse than the shadows that hunted them. Forward, he decided. We need to get out now. And just as they took a step, the door to the room slammed open, revealing 3 shadowy figures silhouetted against the light. They froze, hearts pounding. Found you, said the tallest one, a smirk playing on his lips. The confrontation hung in the thick air as their fate hung in the balance, and Arthur could feel the walls closing in. Would they manage to escape once more? Or was this the end for them both? The towering figures loomed over them, shadows stretching and reaching as if they could claw at the very essence of Arthur and Marianne. Move, the smirking leader commanded, stepping into the dim light. His eyes gleamed with a predatory nature, hungry for whatever secrets they held. Arthur's heart thundered in his chest, the sound drowning out his thoughts. Panic seized him, but with it came a flicker of determination. Marianne, we need a plan now. He breathed, his mind racing. But every thought dissolved as the men advanced, their heavy boots echoing ominously against the concrete. Where's the cleaning lady? The second man growled, impatience evident in his tone. We know you've got her number. Just give it to us, and we might let you 2 walk out of here. Marianne trembled beside him, the weight of the moment crashing down. Arthur took a deep breath, grasping her hand tighter. Don't say anything. We can find another way, but hope flickered as another path opened up in his mind. The stacks of crates, scattered tools, and rusting machinery offered an escape route, provided they could buy enough time. They just needed the right moment. Like, we'll just give her to you. Arthur's voice rose with feigned bravado. She's not some pawn you can take. She's a person, and she's not going anywhere with you. A low chuckle escaped the leader. You don't know who you're dealing with. You're in way over your heads, kid. Before Arthur could respond, a sudden loud crash boomed from the entrance, sending a rattle through the building. Both attackers turned instinctively, and Arthur seized the moment. This way. He pulled Marianne into the shadows, propelling her toward the maze of crates that stood like a fortified wall. As they ducked behind a towering stack, Arthur could hear the men cursing, scrambling to figure out their next move. The distraction might be their only chance. Do you think we can sneak out the back? Marianne whispered, her voice almost lost in the chaos. There's no time. We need to keep moving, Arthur replied, trying to suppress the quiver in his voice. They pressed further into the gloom, weaving between crates and machinery. The dim lighting gave them cover, but shadows danced menacingly around them, threatening exposure at any moment. Crashing sounds and angry shouts echoed behind them. The men were tearing through crates, searching desperately. Arthur felt the crushing weight of urgency, a tangible fear that this was their last chance. Keep going. They crawled low, slipping through a narrow opening between the stacks. Just as they found a small gap that led deeper into the warehouse, Arthur caught a glimpse of the men returning, eyes blazing with rage. Back that way. They've gotta be close. The leader yelled, pointing as if they could simply follow a scent trail. Marianne's breathing quickened, and Arthur felt the adrenaline surge. They were running out of time, and instinct pushed them forward. Adrenaline blurred time, but at that moment, a sharp realization struck. They weren't just running from the men, they were running toward an unknown future. In the growing darkness, a beam of light suddenly illuminated a section of the wall. It flickered like an old movie projector, threatening to expose them. Arthur felt a pull toward it, his pulse racing. Come on, we have to take the risk. As they dashed toward the light, a loud crack and a sudden scream cut through the air. The sound sent chills racing down Arthur's spine, and he glanced back to see the figures stumbling in disarray. Faster, he urged, dragging Marianne with him as they charged toward the light. With one last push, they burst through onto a balcony overlooking the warehouse floor. Heart pounding, Arthur looked down to see an empty expanse, no clear paths, only the darkness closing in even more. But up here, they had the height advantage. What now? Marianne asked, breathless, searching their surroundings in frantic desperation. Maybe, but before he could finish, the sound of footsteps thundered up the stairs. Art flashed a glance around and spotted a rusted ladder leading to the roof. Now, he shouted, urgency driving them forward as the footsteps echoed closer, filling the air with the promise of confrontation. Just as they began to climb, the men burst onto the balcony, determination marking their faces. It's over, kids. Arthur and Marianne had only moments to escape the rising danger, their hearts racing as they ascended into the unknown. What lay ahead was uncertain, but there could be no turning back now. Keep climbing, he yelled, the sounds of pursuit pounding in their ears as they pulled themselves up the last rungs. What awaited them at the top? Would there be safety? Or would it be the greatest risk of all? Darkness loomed as they lifted themselves onto the rooftop, breaths heavy in the night air. The rooftop was cold beneath their hands, the rough surface a stark contrast to the frantic warmth radiating through them. Arthur and Marianne scrambled to their feet, eyes wide as they took in the vastness of the night sky above, but the surrounding darkness felt claustrophobic. Their previous breaths were heavy with dread, but now it was mingled with a twinge of hope. Quick, hide, Arthur whisper shouted, his heart still thrumming furiously. They ducked behind a vent, its metal frame providing some semblance of cover. The sounds of anger below thudded upward, cutting through the still air. Do you think they saw us? Marianne peered around the corner of the vent, her breath almost stagnant in the petrified air, dread stealing her resolve. No, not if we stay quiet, he replied, though uncertainty gnawed at him. They had to hold on to hope, but the men were relentless, their voices echoing up the stairway like banshees. What was that? One of the men growled from below, his frustration palpable. They can't have gotten far. Check the roof. Arthur felt his throat constrict. The men's steps thundered toward the ladder, and he gritted his teeth, ready for whatever came next. If they found them, there would be no escape. Do you have any ideas? Marianne's eyes glimmered with desperation, and Arthur glanced around, searching for some sort of solution. The odd shapes up here, twisted in shadows, there had to be something they could use. Look, he pointed to a cluster of old tarps and broken pallets piled against a nearby wall. We can disguise ourselves. They darted toward the heap, urgency coursing through Arthur's veins. He quickly threw a number of tarps over both of them, hoping the darkness would cloak them just in time. They huddled together, trying to remain as still as possible. Where are you, you little rats? The leader's voice rang out closer now. The men reached the rooftop and began scanning the area, their breath hissing like steam in the cold night. If the leader caught sight of them, now panic seized Arthur again. It was unbearable to think of the consequences, but he forced himself to breathe steady. Just then, a sudden crash echoed. A box from the edge of the roof tipped over in the breeze, rolling a moment before it clattered loudly to the ground. Did you hear that? One man called out, and Arthur felt the hairs on his arms stand up. Stay on guard. The leader's voice dripped with menace. They can't hide forever. Arthur squeezed Marianne's hand tighter, feeling the pulse of her fear coursing through him. We have to find a way down, he whispered urgently. The thought of edges powered by desperation hung heavy between them. But could they navigate that staircase filled with men, or was it too risky? The men began moving closer, their shuffling boots sounding ominous, and Arthur's heart raced faster than he could comprehend. He caught the faint glint of light from the street below. It could lead them to safety, but how far could they drop without getting hurt? On three, we run, he said, his voice barely above a breath. 1, 2, a crash resonated again, louder this time, shaking the rafters, sending tremors through the floor beneath them. What the hell was that? The men turned, confusion momentarily reigning before anger seized them, and Arthur felt their focus shift away. Now, he shouted, adrenaline sparking through him as they sprang to life, racing toward the edge of the roof. With a single leap, they dove toward the light below, hearts pounding in synchronicity as they launched into an uncertain descent, clinging to one another. It was as if time slowed, the ground rushed up to meet them, But in that fleeting moment, a realization hit Arthur like a freight train. There were no guarantees in this life. And then the world shattered around them as they hit the ground. Pain and chaos exploded in a cacophony of sound, leaving them gasping in a world transformed by sudden darkness. Would they survive the fall? Or would this desperate plunge seal their fate? The night held its breath, waiting for what came next. Arthur's world faded into a blur of pain and confusion as he hit the ground. The impact jolted through him like a bolt of lightning, leaving his limbs numb and the breath knocked sharply from his lungs. Beside him, Marianne lay still, her body crumpled against the asphalt. Panic surged in his chest as he clawed at the pavement, desperately searching for some sign of life from her. "Marianne," he gasped, voice barely a whisper. A moment of silence stretched longer than eternity before he felt her stir. She blinked rapidly, eyes wide as reality flooded back. "Arthur, are we? We're okay," he replied, his voice unsteady. "For now." His heart raced as he pushed himself up, still reeling from the impact. They had made it free from the drone and the looming shadows, but at what cost? Glancing around, the street was eerily quiet, deserted under the shrouded night. They had landed behind an alleyway, a stroke of luck, but it wouldn't last forever. "Come on, we have to move." He offered his hand, feeling a swell of relief as she wrapped her fingers around his. They stumbled toward the mouth of the alley, keeping low to avoid detection. "Where are we going?" she asked, each word strained with urgency. "To find her," he replied, conviction surging within him. "The cleaning lady, she holds the key. Whatever danger we're in, she must know how to face it." Together, they navigated through the quiet streets, the dark clouds of uncertainty still hovering above them. They needed answers rapidly, and it felt like they were racing against time. As they turned a corner, Arthur spotted a diner with neon lights flickering like a beacon of hope. "In there," he urged, pushing the door open. The diner's atmosphere was thick with the smell of fried food and coffee. No one seemed to notice them as they slipped inside, their hearts still racing from the adrenaline. Arthur quickly scanned for the cleaning lady, the chance of finding her dwindling with every second. Marian nodded toward a table in the corner, where a figure hunched low. "What about her?" "Yes, let us approach cautiously," he whispered, but as they walked closer, dread twisting in his gut, the familiar face came into focus. It was her, the cleaning lady, eyes sharp and alert, as if expecting them. "Arthur," Marian, she whispered, her voice measured but firm. "You shouldn't have come here." "You know something?" Arthur pressed, his mind racing. "We need to know who is after us and why. Please help us." The cleaning lady sighed, looking around cautiously before leaning closer, as if the shadows around them might snatch away her words. "They know you're searching for the truth. They'll come for you if they haven't already." Arthur's pulse quickened. "What did you mean before when you said, you don't know who you're dealing with?" She locked eyes with him, her gaze piercing through the chaos. "They have ears and eyes everywhere. They see all, including your fears and weaknesses." Marianne sat up straighter, grasping the edge of the table. "What do they want?" The cleaning lady took a deep breath, her voice now just above a whisper. "They're after a deal, a powerful deal. You aren't just pawns in this game. You're key players, two sides of the same coin." Arthur felt the pieces clicking together, but still couldn't grasp the whole picture. "What does that mean?" "There are corrupt powers at play, leveraging your companies and secrets for a greater agenda. They think you can topple their empire or endorse it. Either way, they plan to use you. If you want to survive," she paused, her voice barely holding its weight, "you need to fight back." Ignoring their confusion, Marian shot back. "How do we fight something so powerful?" "Through the truth," she replied, her eyes narrowing with determination. "And with the evidence I've gathered, you'll need allies, people you can trust, because they'll come for you both." "Show us," Arthur demanded. "Show us everything." The cleaning lady nodded slowly, as if weighing the gravity of what she had to share. "Meet me tonight, deep in the crossroads. But remember, trust no one, your lives depend on it." Arthur exchanged a glance with Marianne, her eyes reflecting both fear and newfound hope. They couldn't back down now. This was their chance to reclaim control, to stealthily weave through a world shrouded in darkness. "Tonight, then," he confirmed, voice steady yet urgent. The promise of truth lit a fire inside him, stronger than fear, and in that moment, he He felt a sense of purpose rise up as they prepared to leave the diner. A sense of danger loomed once more. But this time, they weren't frozen in fear. They had a plan. They were ready to unearth secrets that could shake the very foundations of the empire they fought against. Their fight was just beginning, and they would emerge equipped with knowledge and allies, determined to reclaim their story. The stakes were life or death, but Arthur and Marion both understood one thing. They held the power to rewrite the narrative. Whether they fell or soared depends on stepping into the unknown with bravery. With one last look back at the diner, they ducked into the night. It was time to face the darkness head-on because united, they were more than just two frightened souls. They were a force, and nothing would stop them from breaking through the chaos into the light of truth. And as they pulled away from the diner into the shadows of the streets, they knew that everyone in this game would soon tremble, because the final act was about to begin. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next explosive chapter of this gripping saga. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your love for the story. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what is coming next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything, and only true fans understand the importance of staying connected.